And everyone, welcome to Sunday Satsang. The affirmation for today, from Affirmations for Self-Healing by Swami Ananda, is on alertness. There are two currents in life. One takes us downward towards unconsciousness, the other upward towards cosmic consciousness. The first is an impulse born of a sense of past familiarity. Life, like a lotus, evolves out of the mud of lower consciousness toward the light of divine awareness. Subconsciously, we imagine ourselves comfortable with the stages we've traversed so far, but we are not always so ready for the adventure of further growth. The second current in life is the soul's impulse. We cannot find happiness in turning back toward the mud. Fulfillment lies only in reaching up toward perfect divine awareness. To achieve it, we must be alert in everything we do, for in the flow of increasing wakefulness lies the joy we are all seeking. And please affirm with me, I am awake, energetic, enthusiastic.
I am awake, energetic, and enthusiastic.
I give my full alert attention to everything I do.
I give my full alert attention to everything I do.
Knowing that in absolute consciousness, I shall find God.
I shall find God.
And more quietly, I am awake, energetic, enthusiastic.
I am awake, energetic, enthusiastic.
I give my full alert attention to everything I do.
I give my full alert attention to everything I do.
Knowing that in absolute consciousness, I shall find God.
I shall find God.
And I'm going to whisper, I am awake, energetic, enthusiastic.
I am awake,
I give my full alert attention to everything I do. Knowing that in absolute consciousness, I shall find God.
I shall find God.
Now silently, I am awake, energetic, enthusiastic. I give my full alert attention to everything I do. Knowing that in absolute consciousness, I shall find God. And please pray silently with me. Let me pray always with alert, awake attention to thy listening presence, knowing that thou dost hear the merest whisper of my thoughts. Shanti, Shanti.
Good morning to everyone here and all of those online. We'll begin reading from Whispers from Eternity by Ananda entitled Driving the Rebel King, Ignorance. O mighty mystic judge of life, I ask thee in my hall of soul stillness, what is sin? Thy whispers of silence, dim at first, grew into bright articulations of thought. I heard and understood thy meaning. Sin is a rebel king. His name is ignorance. Ignorance is the perpetrator of all evil, the main root of the tree of ill health, the primal cause of all error and soul blindness. King Ignorance and his army of bacteria, physical disease, mental desires, dullness, false ambition, spiritual indifference to high truths, have been devastating the nourishing harvest fields of spirituality. That harvest of countless fulfillments was ripe for reaping when the harsh tread of air trampled it to the ground. I wanted to weep in despair when I heard thy voice whispering to me in my soul. The sun of my protection shines on me always, equally, on thy sunny days and on thy coal black nocturnal hours. Thou shouldst always have faith in me and smile, for the greatest of all sins against me is not to be happy. Let the ripples of unceasing smiles play over thy face. Through their transparency, my life will come to thine assistance. By smiling with determined happiness, thou wilt always please me. And from the New Path by Swami Ananda, this is drawn from the chapter, He Gathers Strength to Climb. And at this point in time, he had not yet discovered the autobiography of yogi. He hadn't gone to become a disciple of his master in Los Angeles. He was still in his last year in college. And at that point, he pretty much finished all the karma there, and he asked permission of his parents if he could leave. And very reluctantly, they said, okay, this is his senior year, just one semester to go, and that was it, because he really felt now the calling of his soul to seek truth. At about this time in my life, I had an interesting dream. I was living with many other people in a torture chamber. For generations, our families have lived here. Knowing no world but this one, the possibility of any other existence simply never occurred to us. One awoke, one was tortured, and at night, one found brief respite in sleep. What else could there be in life? We didn't particularly mind our lot. Rather, we imagined ourselves reasonably well off. Oh, to be sure, there were bad days, but then there were also good ones. Days together sometimes when we were less tortured than usual. The time came, however, when a handful of us began to think the unthinkable. Might there, we asked ourselves, just possibly be another, a better way of life? Moments snatched when our torturers were out of earshot, and we could share our doubts with a few friends, served to kindle our speculations. At last, we determined that there simply had to be an alternative to being tortured. A small group of us decided to rebel. We laid our plans carefully. One day, rising together from our task, we slipped up behind the torturers, slew them, and escaped. Sneaking cautiously out of the great room, fearing lest armies of torturers be lying in wait for us outside, we encountered no one. The torture chamber itself, it turned out, occupied only the top floor of a large, otherwise empty building. We walked unchallenged down flights of stairs, emerging from the ground floor onto a vast, empty plain. Confined as we've been our whole lives in the torture chamber, the horizon seemed incredibly distant. Joyfully, we inhaled the fresh air. Gazing about us, we all but shouted the previously never imagined word, freedom. Before departing the building, however, we glanced up at the top floor, seeing the only life we had ever known. There, to our astonishment, we saw the very torturers we thought we'd slain. They were going matter-of-factly about their business as though nothing had happened. Amazed, we looked to one another for an explanation. Suddenly, the answer dawned on me. Don't you see? I exclaimed. It's ourselves we have conquered, not the torturers. With that realization, I awoke. Soulmate from time to time would share this miraculous story. And it was one of the fellow disciples of his when he was there with Master. And he was an expert mountaineer. And I believe he was Swiss. And in Europe, he had a number of first ascents. And so one particular climb, which was very, very challenging, he took on. And he got to the point where there was an overhang. And there was no way that he could continue on. And there was no way he could return. The climb was absolutely too steep and too dangerous. And so he didn't know what to do. And so he thought, well, if I'm going to die, I might as well just see what I can do to try. He'd be upside down, basically, defying gravity. Might as well just try and see if somehow I can make it over the lift, because once he did, then he was set. He could descend down the other side of the mountain. So 20 times he would go up. He knew, of course, what likely would happen, and he would fall back down to the ground. And he did it again and again and again until there was a force. There was no mistaking it. It wasn't his power. There was a force that kept him glued to that overhang until he was able to get over the lip and then down the other side. Well, that's the spiritual path. Sometimes I was sharing actually with friends yesterday when we were having this level 2 class that people would say, well, what's it been like to be on the path and so forth. And I shared with them, and I've shared with others, to me, it's a miracle to still be on the spiritual path. And I believe that with all my heart, because why does it say in the Bhagavad Gita, get away from my ocean of suffering and misery? That's coming out of the Gita from Krishna saying, this Maya is very, very, very challenging. Get away from it. Get away from this dream. And of course, we're all here because we know now who we are sufficiently, and we know where we're going, and we know that this is a dream. And yet, as Yogananda said, if you hit your dream head on a dream wall, you experience dream pain. And so we are at that point where it really is a point where we had to come, where, okay, we are free. We are in God now, but nevertheless, we do have this loose end of not being awake. We're acting saints. I recently, and I'd highly recommend it, matter of fact, it was last night, I watched it numerous times. It's a video of Swami Kriyananda at the place, the ashram of J. Oliver Black, Song of the Morning Ranch in Michigan. And he was there with Jyotish, perhaps others. This was in the late 1980s. And he was fielding questions. And it's a very deep vibration that's coming through Swamiji. A wonderful video to see. And so he was asked, this person, of course, in this environment that they were all in, wonderful environment, J. Oliver Black's, the energy was supercharged, and Swami remarked, again, you guys have done an amazing thing here. And yet the people were interested naturally. Many people had come from Ananda to visit over the years, and now they have Swami Kriyananda, so they had some questions, of course. And so they asked him, tell me the story about building Ananda. And he said, I really don't know. And you think, well, wait a minute, aren't you the founder of Ananda? You really don't know? And of course, he had to explain that it wasn't he, as he has said, this is not my work. Speaking, Swami Kriyananda speaking, this is not my work, it's not your work, it's Babaji's work. And so he was simply stating a fact that Ananda would not exist unless it was a series of miracles. That was it. And from time to time, he'll share these various miracles with us. I remember, again, because the miracles continue to this day worldwide, when we were building the dining room kitchen many, many years ago, the seclusion retreat, the original property. It was a tricky time because basically the old buildings that Swami had built in the 1960s were falling apart, and particularly the kitchen. And we were building a new kitchen, but it was going to take a little while until we could occupy the kitchen. And so the inspector, and I liked him, he was tough, as building inspectors have that reputation. And so he wanted to inspect the refrigeration there in the old kitchen. And I knew that the refrigeration was adequate, but it wasn't going to satisfy his meters, which were, okay, these are not modern readings. These are readings from the Civil War and so forth. So, you're going to have to make adjustments and so on. And so all I could do, I was following him at a respectful distance, and because I needed that space to pray, because we had so many things we were doing, and it wasn't just the kitchen we were building. We were running the retreat and the discipleship program, and it was a lot of effort. And so I was praying, and I was just saying, well, we always in prayer, this is the ideal attitude, pray with high expectation, but no expectation, so that if Divine Mother, for whatever reason, God does everything for the best, decides that she's going to test us, then okay, so be it. And so I'm walking behind him. He's about halfway there now. And so, of course, my prayers have intensified. And all of a sudden, he turned around and walked back and said goodbye, jumped in his car and left. The miracles continue. There was no reason for it. All I could think of is I couldn't see Babaji there, one of the masters that just basically grabbed him by the shoulder and turned him around. That's all I could, because it was so abrupt. And it stunned me. And so at Ananda, for us, we find that it is an ongoing miracle that we have the willingness to meditate, or we have the willingness to want to meditate. That's good too. We have the willingness to serve, or the willingness to one fine day and so forth to, we're all serving. But we have to, and we do aspire to that savor that really resonates for us, because when we get that down, we're digging out karma. There's many good things to do in this world. We know that. And undoubtedly, we've experimented with doing this good thing, but it really didn't resonate. Why? Because it wasn't digging out that karma. Very interesting. We come down with a very specific dharma, a very specific karma. And what activates the release of that karma is meditation and seva, and even good thoughts, as Yogananda said, stimulates the kundalini. So we're on many, many fronts to continue to do what we can in this process of purification. And so for us, it's a matter of appreciating that the support, like that mountaineer, he would have died there on the mountain if he hadn't had that support. There's just no way he would have been able to pull that off. And in the kitchen experience I just related, it wasn't a life and death thing, but we had a certain momentum at that point. We were really close to the certificate of occupancy, and it would be nice if we could kind of, let this one go and continue forward and keep that momentum going, which has worked out. We were able to do. And so as we more and more, and this is the blessing of maturing on the spiritual path, whether we're on the path for a day, a week, a month, decades, whatever it might be, is this growing trust that, as Master said, if you do just a percentage of what I ask you to do, you'll get there. And when we read the Gita and say, well, out of 1,000, one will seek me, out of 1,000 seek me, one will find me, you think, man, I'm just going to go to the one of those islands and go jump on a hammock and have nimbukani, have some nimbukani. I don't need to put out this effort. Look at the percentages. Forget it. I'm just not that interested. And yet, what did Master say? Our percentages are better. I thought, thank you for saying that. Because all of the encouragement and all of the hope and all of the things that are part and parcel of our life, be it from satsang and all the many varied ways that these blessings do come, we need them. We absolutely need them. We must have them. Because otherwise, it's too easy to get bogged down. Swami recently was talking about retreat. And he says, what really happens on retreat, I'd never heard this before, fascinating, is you go on retreat to reinvent yourself. Very, very good. That's exactly it, because that's what we're trying to do on a daily basis, moment to moment. The minutes are more important than the years. We're trying to reinvent ourselves. And what are we trying to reinvent? We're trying to reinvent that enthusiasm and that drive, all of that, in order to put out that extra amount of energy that mountaineer needed to do. It's a very interesting thing at Ananda, because on one level, we are, as this is an expansive work, needing to be comfortable with our purse, make sure that, we keep the lights on and on it goes. But on another level, page 2, bite off more than you can chew and chew it. And so one can get confused by these things where on one level, contentment, the supreme virtue, we're already there. What's the need to put out any energy? And on another level, we think, actually, that's wonderful and it's true. Contentment being the highest virtue, but on another level, we need to strive. That's the Leela. Being happy, as we're reading in Whispers, to rebel against, the rebel king itself. Why would Master be writing about you need to be happy, as he knows that we're constantly in the face of all kinds of things that challenge us, that draw our energy down? Because when we're happy, when we're in joy, we get it. And that's what it's all about. I love Lahiri Mahashaya's photo. This is us as we're aspiring to be yogis. We're here. We're definitely here. We're in the world, but we're not of it. And so he's reminding us with this precious photograph. They walk around like this. Obviously, we won't be doing that, but nevertheless, to keep it in mind that it's an inner journey. And as we dive deep into our own soul, discovering and rediscovering our own joy, then out comes that wonderful and expansive, compassionate energy that we all care about, because it's not just about our own realization. That's important. We're working on that diligently, but it's also beginning to embrace the ultimate goal, where we've come from, which is blissful omnipresence. And so by praying and by serving and all these things, bit by bit, we begin really, and it's no longer just an affirmation. It goes beyond that. We're seeing God in one another, and sometimes it's a bit of a shock. I was watching a wonderful interview of that incredible violinist, Isaac Stern. And a wonderful, wonderful man, just coming from such a good place. And it was a lengthy interview, and I was enjoying it immensely. And at one point he said, because he was questioned by an interviewer who really knew her stuff, she was asking some very good questions. She was saying, is there a point where basically let go and let God? That's what she was saying, where you just completely immerse yourself into the experience. And he says, from time to time, yes, there is that experience. As in football, they call, I'm in the zone. With musicians, I'm in the zone. And we know that ourselves, when it just becomes effortless, whatever it might be that we're doing. And I was so pleased in that interview because, of course, he's world famous and has helped so many people. He's got a huge heart that from time to time, he would be there. And he said, every time I'm on the conscious stage, of course, I aspire that miracle, because it is that miracle comes. And that's the flow. We know that, or we wouldn't be here. And that's what we are all working on, that bit by bit, through meditation, through our seva, through so many means, we get to that point where we are in that flow, and we're not tempted to leave that center. It's not easy to get to the center. It's not easy to even know we have a center initially, even in Mother India. There's a lot of people that are around scratching their heads wondering what is their purpose in life. But for us, we do know that. And then it's a matter of continually, in a relaxed way. And that's the key. And that's where God and Guru need to be called upon. Please, I'm striving. But you need to strive through me. You need to teach me what it is to be a true karma yogi. Because when we're in that state of being a true karma yogi, then there is that blessing, that flow that comes, that enlivens the heart, that fills the brain with light, and we're able to see things as they truly are. And so we find ourselves in this life, at this moment, experiencing a taste of heaven on earth. And we have earned it, and we have worked really hard to get to this point, so we do not want to take this for granted. I remember talking to Swami one time, many, many years ago, and it was a time that was very, very difficult for him. He had just finished open heart surgery and so forth. And he said to me in the course of our conversation, he said, I worked very hard to get to where I am. And I never heard him say that before. It was obvious that he was a big-time karma yogi up to the last breath, but it was something he felt to share. And no doubt it was to help me to, and help all of us to continue to put out the necessary energy. But it's a very, very tricky to get that art where you're putting out the necessary willpower, and yet it's relaxed. You're putting out the necessary willpower, but at the same time, you are in the self. You're in the spine. You're drinking of that joy. And so, on some levels, it's getting a little easier because we've experienced enough times at this point that this joy is very attractive to us. And so it's easier. It's like years ago when I was a monk, at the seclusion retreat, there was only 2 monks there at the time. And he had the cabin that had the nice propane heater. And I had, I don't know what you would call it, but it didn't have that, a wood stove and a few other things. And so we would meditate together. And I would be in my cozy sleeping bag. It'd be early in the morning. And I would begin to think, well, maybe I'll miss this meditation because invariably it's snowing outside, it's wintertime. But I came up with something that I use to this day. Very, very effective, and got me out of my bed and scampering across, 5 or 10 minutes to his place, which was simply, now I'm in my sleeping bag and I wake up maybe an hour later, my meditation's been cut short, and I go into my day in a hurried fashion. Or I'm a little cold when I get out of my sleeping bag, rush around, find all the clothes I can find, and get across that snow, whatever it might be, and then have that wonderful 2-hour meditation with a fellow monk. It took me not a second, a quarter of a second, an eighth of a second, but I had to do it. If I didn't do that exercise invariably, then sleep caught me, and I would wake up and, oh my gosh, I forgot that exercise. That's what we need to do, because every moment, every single moment, go negative, go positive. Break in the right direction. If you want to be happy, as Master said, make good choices. And so we are more and more, as Master said, be practical in your idealism. We're beginning with that ideal shining before us, is freedom in God, which we know is ours. And it's ours now, but we have to awaken to that. That we have to continue to put out that effort, but in a way that has humor, that has joy, that has long rhythm, that has patience, that has all the needed ingredients, because this is indeed the Boston Marathon, except for a few select few, where it's just a 50-yard dash. And so with that in mind, though God comes like a thief in the night, we want to keep our options open. We want to keep up that strong sadhana in all the various forms. And so, as always, it's a joy to be with you all, and let's have our